Hello, and welcome to American Amnesia. I am Cliff Garner, your host, and I've been gone for a while. I had some very serious health issues, and I'm praising God that I am still among the living. There was some pretty heavy stuff that went on there. I may talk about that in the near future. I don't know. We'll see. And at any rate, I am back. There's been a lot of things that have been going on, and there were a lot of delays that I went through, apart from the hospital stay. That was mostly in May, and May and April. I was in for quite a while there. And anyway, the other repercussions from that, including some of the health issues that are still pending, or not pending, but I'm trying to work them out. I'm trying to work a lot of things out on the hospital bills and everything else. So, at any rate, I've been really caught up in all that kind of thing. And although I do keep my eye on the news, I really haven't missed a whole lot. In fact, I'm pretty well on top of it, as anybody that checks out the things I post on Facebook would know. I'm pretty active on there, and I just haven't had the time and the wherewithal to do it. Get on here on YouTube. I have been meaning to get on for a couple weeks now. But I'm still, like I say, I'm still working some things out. Lost quite a bit of weight, which is the upside of all that. But at the same time, and I still got further to go. But at the same time, the other things have been pretty serious. So there was a good reason I wasn't around for a while. Like I say, I may talk about that soon, but not as of yet. At any rate, I did want to kind of mention a couple things. I've been watching the QAnon stuff pretty closely. I'm convinced that QAnon's legit. Although I do keep my eye on certain aspects of it, because the person who is doing this, or whoever it might be a group of people, they have admitted that there would be times of that they would use disinformation. So I don't follow it as religiously as a lot of people do, but I do keep an eye on it, and it's been very interesting to watch. The arrests of these pedophiles around the world, particularly here in the U.S., human traffickers in particular, that these kinds of things have been really largely ignored by the national corporate horror media, the prostitutes, CNN and whatnot. Have been very studiously ignoring it, but it has been noted all around the world at some level that there are these arrests that have been going on, and they've been occurring all over the world in places like Sweden and Norway and England. You saw that Tommy Robinson has been arrested for broadcasting about one of the so-called grooming gangs, these groups of Muslims, Muslim men, who have turned out girls into the life of prostitution or virtual slavery, and getting them strung out on drugs and all that. And we could argue that they're not good Muslims, but they but they are Muslims nonetheless. And I knew a lot of Muslims who drank, which they're not supposed to do according to the Quran, but they did anyway. And that also that I did see some of the ISIS boys when they would arrive in Istanbul, that they would go out and get drunk and chase men, women, little boys and little girls. Basically they would feel guilty about that and be willing to die in battle to atone for their sins, as it were. So this whole concept of a good Muslim or whatever, we can always go back to the no true Scotsman, or one true Scotsman, or whatever you're actually calling a true anything, but the true Scotsman fallacy that is a fallacy, of course. It isn't valid thinking, and like it or not, that's what these guys are. And it is probably incidental in their cases, but there is a tradition within Islam that has been legitimized that upholds such behavior. And we can argue all kinds of other arguments about that, but the fact remains that this is a tradition that's actually not ill regarded by many imams. In fact, in Turkey, they're trying to legitimate child marriage and things of this sort. So you just don't throw it out the window, just because they aren't what one person or another wants to say is a true Muslim. Mr. Erdogan makes this mistake a lot, and he incurred a lot of wrath, and rightfully so, from a lot of people who regarded themselves just as good a Muslim as he. And they had a point. They had a great point. And unfortunately, those voices are becoming increasingly snuffed out as he becomes increasingly the dictator that he's always dreamed of becoming. A lot of things have happened. There's been developments in Turkey and Iran, of course. The rejection of the Iran deal by President Trump, which I applaud, has caused a lot of repercussions around the world. But we're finding out that a lot of that has to do with kickbacks. And that we can probably guess that with Macron's behavior since then, that France is one of the ones that's getting some of these, particularly probably French banks would be my guess. That the whole scandal of his signing that deal, it really wasn't a treaty. It was even shadier than it was originally reported. Apparently, that Obama was also making sure that the Iranians had access to American banking, which is to Mr. Obama's great discredit, and what little legitimacy he may have held on to is actually becoming stripped away. He was not a good president. Sorry about that, snowflakes, but he sucked. And the evidence is coming out increasingly that he was a bigger crook, just as I've been saying for many years. I didn't say it the first year. I took the first year of his becoming a president and running the country. I did not heavily criticize him. I mentioned some things. I said I didn't think that they were positive looking, the time, but I basically stayed away from criticizing him in as thorough a manner as I probably would have otherwise. I gave him a real good chance. I actually hoped that he was going to be good. I was sitting in Turkey when he delivered his speech to the Egyptian university. I forget, Al-Azhar, I think, or something like that. But I sat there with my friend and sometimes roommate Paul, and we were both just approving, actually, of his speech. We applauded it, and I know that the feeling I had at the time was very good. But there were also other things he was doing that were bothering me. The failure to provide the shovel-ready jobs and teaching jobs that he was talking about. That was a very stupid move on his part. He should have followed through with that. He would have actually done people in the U.S. a lot of good. Instead, he coddled the bankers in so many ways, and made a lot of money. And he was a really total stooge for the globalists, and I very quickly lost respect for him. And before he was gone, I had nothing but contempt for the man. And that's where I am today. I still execrate his works. And rightfully so. He did not do anything for the American people. Nothing good. He sold us out. So, at any rate, we find out more and more of this. The scandal of him spying on Trump is more and more apparent. There's more and more information on it coming out all the time, and it was shameful. His spying on the American people was shameful. Very shameful. And we knew about that. We were told about that. What's his name? Oh goodness, not Assange, but Assange talked about it, but the whistleblower. I can't think of his name now. But he gave us very good information on this, and everybody gave him a pass. He had NBC broadcasting out of the White House. I mean, how obvious does this collusion between the press and Obama have to be? Not to mention the way this whole silliness from Hollywood has become. I mean, De Niro and his idiotic mouthings. Of course, the word on De Niro is that he is very, very likely a pedophile. And it would be interesting to see Harvey Weinstein roll over on him. And don't be surprised if he does. There's bigger fish too. The pedophiles are being cornered. And a guy like Weinstein, I think, near as I can tell, his sins were always with adults. Near as I can tell. I could be wrong about that. But if he isn't a pedophile, you know that he thinks of himself as better than them. Don't be surprised. Do not be surprised. And you got Corey Feldman and all of these others that have been talking about this stuff for a long time. But I actually want to move on to an article in National Review dated June 5th of 2018. It's not very old, just a few days old. National Review, it's titled Elites Value Mellifluous Illegality over Crass Lawfulness. Mellifluous, or Mellifluous, however you want to pronounce it. I heard it pronounced both ways. I think it's Mellifluous, actually, but I could be wrong. Actually, Mel is a Greek for honey. I think I might have entered Latin under that. And the word name Melissa as a honeybee, which in Turkey there are girls there named Melis. And it's the same name, just pronounced a little differently. And so flowing like honey, smooth, right? The Obama smooth talking. You know, he looks good in that suit, so, and he does his little thing and starts talking so smoothly and presidentially that, you know, you can keep your health care. Yeah, right, whatever. You can keep your doctor, right? Right. Lie to us again. Some people prefer sweet lies to rough truths. This is factual. This is a style over substance type of argument, and this is very common. The author is Victor Davis Hanson. I found this to be a very excellent article. I will provide the link for it. And I'll just jump right in. Obama defies the Constitution but sounds presidential. Trump follows it but sounds like a loudmouth from Queens. And he does. He's got that that accent. I keep thinking of Top Cat. You remember the cartoon? When I listen to Trump, he's kind of got that kind of a sound to his voice. Anyway, Donald Trump blusters nonstop. He offers contrasting messages about whether, on any given day, he might fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, or Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. His tweets are certainly not presidential, at least as the adjective is usually understood. At perpetual campaign rallies, Trump mocks his critics, caricaturing their voices and slamming them with adolescent epithets like crying Chucky Schumer. He accuses House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi of being an enabler of MS-13 actually, but M13 gang members after she chastised him for calling such psychopaths animals. Trump has defined his own uncouthness, which so incenses his opponents, as the, quote, new presidential, end quote. Yet so far, after over a year of intense investigation, Special Counsel Mueller has found no evidence that Donald Trump, or even his low-level subordinates, had ever colluded with Russian government interests to hijack the 2016 election and defeat Hillary Clinton. Indeed, Mueller has shown himself desperate to indict almost anyone connected with the Trump campaign with almost any charge he can think of, other than colluding with the Russians to warp an election, his original mandate. Call the Trump paradox crass lawfulness. Crass, kind of crude, brassy, maybe even a little bit gross, right? What drives Trump's critics nearly crazy is not any evidence that Trump has broken federal laws per se. Instead, their rub is that there are somehow no criminal statutes against the president boorishly acting unpresidential, in quotes, and his loud quest to supercharge the economy while undoing the entire agenda of his predecessor, who was so dearly beloved by the media, universities, Hollywood, and identity politics groups. the very forces that have been actually Obama's undoing. Um, they've unraveled even further since he's been out. But they were part of his undoing. People were sick of Obama by the time it got to it. Certainly, President Obama's teleprompted speeches were mellifluous. That some sort of postmodern preacher, Obama often sermonized to Americans about the predetermined arc of history that purportedly bent us all inescapably toward his own just moral version of the universe. The inevitability, right? That's the word that Marx used to suggest that there were things that made it inevitable that socialism would overrun capitalism. Nonsense. There is nothing inevitable in history outside of the fact that it has a beginning and an end. And stories have a beginning and end. There is a tendency with time not to move backwards, even though theoretically it can. But it is always moving forward in time, not coming back, but moving forward. There may come a time when that might be different, when we understand time in a different way. But we can't think of it in that way yet. Time is linear. It moves along a line, going from past to future. But there's nothing inevitable. Not from the human perspective. Of course, Marx used history as his rationale for his scientific socialism. But he was every bit as utopian as those that he slandered as utopian. Think about it. At any rate, in calm ministerial tones, the progressive Obama sometimes slapped a puerile America's wrists and treating us like children, with frequent admonitions to behave and to not act so illiberally. Or he frequently reminded us with a frown that quote, that is not who we are, unquote. Recall that Obama came into office promising that he would lower the seas and cool the planet with a generation of young, like-minded activists who, we were lectured, were the ones who we had all been waiting for. Now, President Emeritus Obama worries that perhaps his messianic appearance came too soon for us to fully appreciate his divinity. He's a fake messiah. Despite Obama's recent projection that his 8-year tenure was scandal-free, quotes, along with the reality that the media's biased compliance sought to make such a startling fantasy true, the Obama administration was, in many respects, lawless. A lot of us noticed this. It will eventually rank as the most scandal-ridden administration since Warren G. Harding's. I think they're exceeding Warren G. Harding. Teapot Dome was a big deal in its time. But what we're seeing is even deeper and a deeper problem. The scandals of the scandal-free Obama administration. The Fast and Furious scandal was, among other things, about deliberate government gun-running of weapons to Mexico, perhaps in a warped effort to discredit current U.S. firearms laws. The Benghazi debacle involved a cover-up of a pre-planned terrorist hit on our consulate. I watched that from Turkey. They got a very different perspective than you guys did here. The Benghazi debacle involved a cover-up of a pre-planned terrorist hit on our consulate, an attack that was possible only because it was well known that the consulate's security was lax. The Benghazi cover-up involved UN Ambassador Susan Rice lying 5 times on national TV in a single day when she claimed that the terrorist operation was the result of a spontaneous riot over a video. I had a friend in Egypt who was going to go to the riots that occurred in Cairo that same night. And I told him not to go. He said, well, this is to defend my prophet. I said, I suspect that this is a provocation by my government. I told him that. Because I was smelling it. They were starting to talk about that Sam Basil and how he was making this movie. And they were just, it was like, why are they doing this? Why are they drumming this up and nothing's happened? And I told him, I thought that it was actually intended to make Muslims look bad. It did. It surely did. In fact, it was one of the things that reinforced that image in people's minds. But they did it. They did it, all right. But at the same time, what happened in Benghazi, it wasn't because of that. It was something else. What happened in Cairo was because of that. And it led to the downfall of the Muslim Brotherhood as a governing body in Egypt. Consequences, right, Mr. Obama? And to justify that re-election cycle concoction, the video maker, a foreign resident on USO, was summarily jailed on trumped-up probation charge. Oh yeah, just kind of smack him around a little bit. He's just a little guy. That's how you operated, oh bumhole. Piece of crap. An IRS regional high official and Obama partisan, Louis Lerner, weaponized and discredited the IRS by hounding conservative groups that were seeking tax-exempt status. Another example of your garbage. Lerner staged a self-serving public stunt to leak her misbehavior to friendly ears. She had a reporter ask her a planted question about targeting conservatives. At her later congressional testimony, Lerner invoked the Fifth Amendment to avoid self-incrimination. She was never charged by the Obama State Department. Indeed, Obama himself, after expressing initial pseudo-contriteness in the face of public furor, waited the public out before finally announcing that there was not a smidgen of corruption in the IRS. Lerner, in effect, was rewarded for successfully neutralizing many conservative activist groups just months before the 2012 election. In October 2017, facing a lawsuit by conservative groups, the IRS admitted in court that it had unfairly targeted them during the Obama administration. It agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement, and the current Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, apologized to more than 450 conservative organizations and questions. Just time after time. Scandal after scandal. The lapdog press let that piece of crap off the hook. Nadine Strawson, a liberal and former president of the ACLU, conceded, but only in hindsight when both Obama and she were out of their respective offices, that Obama was one of the most hostile presidents to civil liberties in history. The demonstrable fact. He was even worse than Bush. Perhaps she was referring to the fact that Eric Holder's and Loretta Lynch's Justice Department had spied on the Associated Press reporters, monitored the communications of Fox reporter James Rosen, and subpoenaed New York Times reporter James Risen to force him to reveal his confidential sources. Holder was also the first Attorney General in U.S. history to be held in contempt of Congress for refusing to hand over subpoenaed documents. They should have jailed the son of a bitch. We're slowly appreciating over the last year that lying under oath was an Obama administration requisite for a high position in the intelligence community. But it was during the 2016 election cycle that the Obama administration descended to a level of corruption not seen in a century. Right in the middle of the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton's email server, Obama, as judge and jury, announced that candidate Clinton had violated no criminal law while as Secretary of State. Well, of course, nobody did anything, right? Right, Mr. Obama? Obama also lied when he stated that he'd known nothing about such an unlawful server, although emails prove that he himself had communicated over it on several occasions. Liar! His FBI director, James Comey, deliberately scrambled the law and exonerated Hillary Clinton from wrongdoing, not because she had not broken the law, but, according to Comey's own invented interpretations of the statute, because she had not intended to violate the law. Intention is not part of the law. Not unless you're trying to talk about something like the difference between first, second, and third degree murder. Then intention becomes important, but only because it separates the first from the second. First degree murder is intended, deliberate, planned. But even second and third degree murder is murder. And they can become capital cases. Comey also admitted to tailoring his circus-like investigation of Clinton around the assumption that she would soon be the president. See, that was the whole thing. They were planning on covering everything up. They had no intention of all this stuff coming out. We were slowly appreciating over the last year that lying under oath was an Obama administration requisite for a high position in the intelligence community. FBI Director Comey lied about the particular sequence of his investigation of the Clinton email scandal. He lied by omission to the president when, in his proposed Oval Office informative dissection of the Steele dossier, he failed to include the fact that it was a product of Hillary Clinton's campaign in the DNC. Oh, well, we just don't mention that. Let's get a FISA hearing and run it through, and we'll do whatever we want. Lawless. Comey's various testimonies often cannot be reconciled with those of his deputy FBI director, Andrew McCabe, who was cited in by the Inspector General for lying. Comey warped a FISA court request to spy on U.S. citizens by deliberately withholding information from the court about the Steele dossier. Comey also has not been forthcoming about the insertion of an FBI informant into the 2016 Trump campaign. Comey has often lectured about the illegality and impropriety of leaking confidential government documents, though he later bragged about his own successful leak of such documents as a successful means of getting special counsel Robert Mueller appointed. In the first place. Just unbelievable. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper and CIA Director John Brennan may prove to be the two most prevaricating officials in the history of any modern administration. Both have lied repeatedly while under oath to Congress, respectively, about their agency's surveillance of American citizens, spying on Senate staffers, the U.S. drone program, and leaking the notorious Steele dossier. In their particular cases, as current media analysts, they have become completely unhinged over the reality that a crude Donald Trump was never so crude as either of them in their attempt to undermine the constitutional principle of telling the truth to Congress while still under oath. I love the way that H.A. Goodman is imitating those fellows and Jeff Sessions. I think that's hilarious. and John Brennan. That's really funny. If you've never listened to H.A. Goodman, I do recommend him very highly. He's one of my favorites. He's a real character too at times. Samantha Power, Susan Rice, and others sought transcripts of surveilled U.S. citizens in order to unmask their names, which were then subsequently leaked to the media. Rice initially lied about her role in the unmaskings. Power's testimony that she had no idea how her name found its way onto the unmasking requests, more than 250 of them, is as surreal as it is mendacious. No, I love that. Mendacious. Deceptive. In 2016 alone, Power sought one unmasking on average every working day, despite the fact that the UN ambassador is not an intelligence official. Interesting, eh? In addition to such unethical and often illegal behavior, the Obama administration institutionalized deception as a tool of government, hiding from the American people all the side agreements to the so-called Iran deal, itself a blatant effort to bypass the treaty-making responsibilities of the U.S. Senate, fabricating yarns to sell the disastrous Obamacare takeover of health care, using executive orders to enact immigration amenities after warning that doing just that would be unconstitutional, lying repeatedly about the circumstances of the Bo Bergdahl prisoner swap. Just on and on and on. There's no end to the deceit and nastiness and secrecy and corruption of the Obama administration. And we still don't know all the garbage yet. Wait till they dig in and find out who he really is anyway. I'll bet they'll find out he's CIA. Almost the only way you can cover up all this so long. Hillary Clinton has never been able to explain why huge gifts to her family's foundation from Russian interests coincided with the State Department's approval of uranium sales to Russia, or why anyone would ever pay her husband $500,000 for a short speech in Moscow. And certainly would not come now, and certainly would not now once her political ambitions have at last calcified. The money dries up because there's no pro for the quid. Quid pro quo. This for that. We live in such strange times that the media ignored the most blatant examples of presidential campaign-style collusion in memory while seeking to invent where it never existed. Remember, Barack Obama on a hot mic was not only caught reiterating to a Russian leader the conditions of Putin-Obama election cycle collusion, but he also spelled out the exact quid pro quo, promised Russian quietude abroad during Obama's re-election campaign, was in exchange for flexibility, i.e. cancellation, of U.S. Eastern European missile defense projects. Yeah, and that did occur. Should Trump ever be... Which is also why Crimea was lost, by the way. I saw that from a lot closer up. Well, Turkey was PO'd about it. They were really PO'd about it. That's right across the Black Sea from them. Oh, yeah. Nice job, old bunghole. Nice job. Should Trump ever be caught making the same deal in 2020, he would probably be impeached. Criminal Camelot versus Crude Queens. Why was the Obama administration so corrupt? 3 reasons stand out. 1, it was the first administration in modern history in which the media saw its role as subordinate and accomplice rather than an auditor. They were collaborators, remember? They were working together to promote a better country or whatever their utopian BS was. The media thereby empowered corruption. 2. It exuded a moral zealousness in its promise to fundamentally transform the country and enact social justice. Any means of doing so were justified by its exalted ends. Well, it was all pretense. Pretentious. It was pretend. It wasn't real. Black people should have actually gotten an improved status. They didn't. He screwed them. They don't want to admit it, and I understand that. But you know something? He screwed them. And hard. And left them with nothing. 3. Like the John F. Kennedy administration, Obama and his team adroitly calculated that in America's celebrity culture, what's hip and cool is often more highly prized than what's confident and lawful, much less crude and ineffective. Style over substance. Hip? Well, you know. What is hip changes fast. And what's hip today isn't tomorrow. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that dealt out in spades right now. Big time. No one would suggest that Donald Trump obeys the law because he has an inherent respect for the Constitution and the nation's ethical bearings, although that perhaps could prove to be so. Rather, Trump has not obeyed or broken the law the way that Obama routinely did, quite simply because he cannot. The media is so hostile to his every act, the popular culture has so frequently written him off as crude, and his critics, both progressive and conservative, have become so hysterical over his person that he lives in a singular 24/7 bubble that faults him for everything from his choice of dessert to the manner in which his daughter holds her child. It gets so petty. See, that's working against the people that are criticizing him. They look stupid. And the rest of the world's starting to see it. Well, some of them have seen it pretty early on, but you know, the rest of the world, the English-speaking world's even starting to pick it up and start to figure, you know, this is actually ridiculous. These people are idiots. In the UK, it's looking like a piece of crap. Doesn't matter if Theresa May's a so-called Tory. She's proving to be a fool. Total fool. Almost as bad as the Labour Party, which is downright nuts at this point. I mean, those people are just full on bonkers. Good grief. Our media and popular culture, as well as our cultural elite, value style far more than substance. Well, of course they do. They don't understand substance. Substance is their undoing. The news, both fake and real, is now all Trump all the time. And because Trump can enjoy baiting his opponents by deliberately being uncouth and coarse, and since he has little respect for past presidential protocol, almost everything is now transparent and nothing is off limits, which is beautiful. This is like a breath of fresh air. Trump haters of the deep state leak, but then again, so do Trump adherents. Many of his cabinet meetings are televised, sometimes painfully. Yeah, and then you get things like good old S-hole Dick, Durbin. The only person that heard that shithole comment. Yeah, shithole Dick. I won't forget. I might even run into you in a restaurant and mention it. Trump can say anything to anyone, anywhere, at any time on Twitter, television, or radio. Finally, this weird juxtaposition of the vacuous and often law-breaking but melodious Obama administration next to the boisterous and rowdy Trump presidency has taught us a lesson about our own moral blindness. Credentials empower illegality. Their mere absence is seen as almost illegal in itself. Both our media and popular culture, as well as our cultural elite, value style far more than substance. Adroitly breaking the law is preferable to obeying it in an uncivilized fashion. Boorishly bragging nonstop about 3% economic growth and pushing 4 and possibly going up to 5. Obama said we should never see 3% growth again. False prophet. And below 4% unemployment is deemed far worse in contextualizing in professional tones a stagnant economy that in 8 years never achieved 3% annual growth. And he said we'd never get it again. What a buffoon. He was selling us out. You do realize that. He was deliberately making sure we wouldn't reach 4% again. Or 3%. And had Hillary Clinton gotten in, that would have been no problem. Credentials empower illegality. Their mere absence is seen as almost illegal in itself. Lawlessly presidential is a misdemeanor. Lawfully unpresidential a felony. A bankrupt agenda delivered by experts is sanctified. An effective one packaged by amateurs is heretical. Imagine that. Having engaged in illegality during the Obama administration is better on a resume than following the law in a Trump government. So far, I think that will change very soon. The new paradigm is upon us. And it grows daily, exponentially. And yet still, this one constant keeps reverberating throughout the hysteria. Our elite always values the messenger over the message. The facade of Camelot exempts empty lawlessness in a way that Queen's accented boosterism seems to nullify real achievement. And that's the end there. There's a point here. The elite values the messenger over the message. Yeah, of course they do. They've been looking for this fake messiah for a long time. They wanted to cram something down our throats, and they came up with a bunghole. That's what they came up with. And now we have all this hangover of identity politics that actually is just kind of fading away, even as they're mouthing it. It's rather funny to watch. In fact, I kind of enjoy it because they're done. And it becomes more shrill and less meaningful every time, with every repetition. So they pushed a messenger, so-called messenger, with no message. No substance, no nothing. Pushed a messenger on us. We sent Donald Trump to Washington, D.C. as a message to those very elites. They don't get it. And he's making a really good case, and a better case all the time, to present himself as a messenger. But he's primarily a message. They don't listen to the message. They don't get it. They really don't get it. And it's just fine because they won't get it. And this is like a joke that we can all share and laugh behind their backs, and they don't understand what we find so funny. We find their idiocy funny. It's sad too. But when you deal with people that are so stupid, you almost have to laugh, otherwise you cry. Until next time.